Prepare for warp speed as we embark on a voyage through the vast expanse of science fiction in movies and television series. From distant planets to alien civilizations, we delve into the heart of the unknown, unraveling the tales that have captured audiences for generations. Get ready to unlock the secrets of the universe on Code Flicks. Hello and welcome to Code Flicks, the podcast where we take a deep dive into your favorite sci-fi and fantasy TV shows and movies. I'm Andre Bonner, and in today's episode, we'll be looking at the dystopic visions and cybernetic realities of the 1982 movie Blade Runner. I don't recall watching this movie when I was younger. I chose this movie after watching it recently and noticing some elements of classism in it. I think it may have been some small form probably inspired Altered Carbon. Of course, that's a series that I plan to do in an episode down the line, so stay tuned for that one. Blade Runner is a 1982 science fiction film directed by Ridley Scott and written by Hampton Fancher and Dave Peoples, starring Harrison Ford, Rutger Hauer, Sean Young, and Edward James Olmos. It is an adaptation of Philip K. Dick's 1968 novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? The film is set in a dystopic future, Los Angeles of 2019, in which synthetic humans known as replicants are bioengineered by the powerful Tyrell Corporation to work on space colonies. When a fugitive group of advanced replicants led by Roy Batty, Hauer, escapes back to Earth, burnt-out cop Rick Deckard, Ford reluctantly agrees to help hunt them down. Blade Runner delves into the effects of technology on the environment and society by reaching to the past using literature, religious symbolism, classic dramatic themes, and film noir techniques. This tension between past, present, and future is represented in the retrofitted future depicted in the film, one which is high-tech and gleaming in places but decayed and outdated elsewhere. In an interview with The Observer in 2002, director Ridley Scott described the film as extremely dark, both literally and metaphorically, with an oddly masochistic feel. He also said that he liked the idea of exploring pain in the wake of his brother's death. When he was ill, I used to go and visit him in London, and that was really traumatic for me. We see this with a lot of directors and writers who work on projects. They make it a part of their life, or they take what they have encountered in their life and they have transformed it into something that is playable on screen. And many films like Silent Green and 1984 take a look at the society of the time and ask questions that often get overlooked in the conversation. The theme of classism shines through with the imagery of the commercial use of technology. There is no privacy, as police seem to be patrolling regularly throughout the sectors. Replicants are bioengineered to be slaves that serve the corporate structure. Artificial animals seem to be more accessible than real ones, as they are extinct.
The eyes are a recurring motif and images that make you question what you're really seeing. These elements of the theme provide the answer to the question of what humanity is uncertain of. An empathy test is used to determine who is the replicant. Replicant seems to be built in such a way that they lack empathy. By the end of the movie, I am left with the question of whether Deckard was a replicant or a human. So we can look at the characters in Blade Runner, starting with Rick Deckard, the film's titular Blade Runner, played by Harrison Ford. At the beginning of the film, Deckard is disillusioned and retired from hunting replicants. His old inspector, Bryant, drags him back into the fold to apprehend 6 Nexus 6 replicants who have staged a mutiny and escaped to Earth. Over the course of the film, Deckard falls in love with Rachel, a sophisticated model of replicant, leading to the final revelation that Deckard may have been a replicant himself. Roy Batty, the leader of the Nexus 6 replicants, played by Rutger Hauer. His goal is to find Tyrell, his creator, to get reprogrammed for a longer life. Batty kills Tyrell when he finds out that he won't be possible. Roy Batty eventually saves Deckard's life before expiring in the final film battle scene. Rachel, a beautiful young replicant who works in Tyrell's office, played by Sean Young. She does not know she is a replicant until Deckard tells her. In 1982, Blade Runner, press kit described Rachel as a cool executive in complete control. Deckard penetrates her smooth running facade and she becomes an innocent little girl. At the end of the film, Deckard and Rachel run away together. Gaff, another Blade Runner who works with Bryant, played by Edward James Olmos. He is highly intelligent and speaks many languages. At the end of the film, he lets Rachel, a replicant, live and also gives Deckard the most definitive clue that he might be a replicant himself. Bryant, the police inspector played by M. Emmett Walsh. In an interview, Walsh said, "Ridley told me that Bryant's stomach was all shot to hell. He liked to see other people drink because he couldn't. He is hard-edged and cynical, referring to replicants as skin jobs." Pris, one of the Nexus 6 replicants, a pleasure model, designed for soldiers, played by Daryl Hannah. She is doll-like and naive. Daryl Hannah had the idea that Pris could do gymnastics because Hannah herself was very skilled. According to Hannah, Pris was eventually grateful to Roy Batty because she's been designed as a pleasure model and he'd saved her from a life of prostitution. Eventually, Deckard shoots and kills Pris. J.F. Sebastian, a genetically abnormal genetic designer played by William Sanderson. He is sweet and gentle and takes Pris in off the street. Sebastian spends his free time producing astonishingly realistic toys as playthings for the upper strata of 2019's rigidly defined society, and as a mechanical companion to offset his own loneliness. Roy Batty eventually kills Sebastian and his employer, Tyrell. Leon Kowalski, a male Nexus replicant played by Brian James. He specialized in combat and loading weapons. He shoots Holden during his Voight-Kampff tests. Rachel eventually kills Kowalski while trying to protect Deckard. Dr. Eldon Tyrell, the founder of the Tyrell Corporation, played by Joe Turkel. Tyrell wants to make replicants more human than human, and is responsible for creating all the Nexus replicants as well as Rachel. He dies at the hands of one of his creations. Zoa, one of the Nexus 6 replicants played by Joanna Cassidy. She performs as Miss Salome dancing with a snake at Taffy's Lewis Club. The snake pit, Deckard figures out Miss Salome's real identity. She is the first replicant he takes down. Hannibal Chu, a genetic designer who specializes in eyes, played by John Hung. Hung said he played Chu as a brilliant scientist who was on the edge of senility. Chu is obsessed with his work and thinks of his eyeballs as his children. Holden, another Blade Runner played by Morgan Paul. He performs a Voight-Kampff test on Leon Kowalski, who shoots him. He survives. Taffy Lewis, the sleazy owner of the Snake Pit Club, played by High Pike. Abdul Ben Hassan, the manufacturer of the replicant snake owner, owned by Zora, played by Ben Astar. Let's talk a little bit about the production of Blade Runner. Philip K. Dick died before its release, but saw a 40-minute special effects test reel, about which he was very complimentary. The screenplay by Hampton Fancher attracted producer Michael Dealey, who secured several financing sources. Later problematic when one delayed the release of the film's special edition, who convinced director Ridley Scott to create his first American film. Scott was unhappy with the script and had Dave Peoples rewrite it. The title derives from Alan E. Norse's novel, The Blade Runner, 1974, whose protagonist smuggles black market surgical instruments. William S. Burroughs wrote Blade Runner, a movie, a cinema treatment aside from the title. Neither Norse's novel nor Burroughs' treatment are relevant to the film. Screenwriter Fancher happened upon a copy of Blade Runner, a movie, whilst Scott searched for a commercial title for his film. Scott liked the title, obtained rights to it, but not to the novel. Note, some edition of Burroughs' treatment novel use the two-word spacing Blade Runner. Blade Runner owes much to Fritz Lang's 1927 film Metropolis. Scott's credit Edward Hopper's painting Nighthawks and proto-cyberpunk's short story comic. The Long Tomorrow by Dan O'Bannon. Art by Mobius, a stylistic mood sources. Scott hired Sid Mead as conceptual artists. Both were influenced by the the French science fiction comic magazine Metal Hurlant, Heavy Metal, to which Mobius contributed. Mobius was offered pre-production of Blade Runner. He declined to work on Ren Lalocque's animated film Es Matus de Temps, a decision Mobius later regretted. Lawrence G. Paul, production designer, and David Snyder, art director, realized Scott worked to designing the spinner hovercrafts. Douglas Trumbull and Richard Urich supervised the special effects for the film. Prior to principal photography, Paul M. Salmon was commissioned by Cine Fantastique magazine to do a special article on the making of Blade Runner. His detailed observations and research later became the book Film Noir, The Making of Blade Runner, which is also called the Blade Runner Bible by the cult following of the film. The book outlines not only the evolution of Blade Runner, but the politics and difficulties on set, particularly on Scott's expectations, coming from Britain, of his first American crew. Also, his directing style with actors created friction with the cast and likely contributed to Ford's subsequent reluctance to discuss the film. I have noticed that the dark tones complement the design of the scenes and sets. It really says dystopian. The buildings and the infrastructure shows the advancement that could have possibly come about from the 1980s to 2019 at that time. Blade Runner has both won and has been nominated for many awards. It was nominated for the following awards: the BAFTA in 1983 for Best Film Editing, Best Makeup Artist, Best Score, Best Sound, Best Special Visual Effects. British Society of Cinematographers, Best Cinematography Award, Fantasporto, International Fantasy Film Award, 1983, Best Film, International Fantasy Film Award in 1993, Best Film, Golden Globe, Best Original Score, Best Original Score, Motion Picture, Oscar in 1983, Best Art Directions, Set Decoration, Best Effects, Visual Effects, Saturn Award 1983, Best Science Fiction Film, Best Director, Best Special Effects, Best Supporting Actor, Best Genre Video Release, Best Genre Video Release 1994. So Blade Runner would have had a large influence, and it wasn't particularly taken up in the North American audiences. Blade Runner was popular internationally and has become a cult classic that I can even speak about it. It's because of that popularity, which is why this exists. This particular episode of the podcast is talking about it. I have been privy to some of the references, so the cult status that it has given it flight in many different TV shows like Futurama, and it's showing up in the Stargate SG-1 series, which we have to probably look at that as well as a podcast episode. Wink, wink. In cartoon series, the Batman animated series, the voice of the actor William Sanderson, who played J.F. Sebastian, his voice was lent in the Batman animated series. So there are a few moments for me that were quite enjoyable to watch, quite interesting. I think that one scene which stands out for me was, and it would probably not be something that could play well in our modern society now, where Deckard gets the replicant Rachel to go to bed with him. Him, basically dictating to her how she must act because she doesn't have, that natural tendency. I think that's what they were trying to play, but it can come across as misogynistic, of course. And I didn't realize, until looking at some of the scenes, like just looking back at some of the scenes, that there was so much Asian stereotypes. There was so much stuff about Japan. I think it's something that I've heard mentioned about this film is that around that time there was a lot of sentiments there, and so it's a little bit of a propaganda kind of thing, and it's expected in most of these films because they have a message to send and they have a message to be put out there. So if it was something that's done today, it might get through the cracks, but it still might be heavily commented. I have a particular theory that is kind of out of left field, right? Because having watched it, I'm considering the fact that the off-world colonists are mostly human. And yes, they have replicants there with them, but it's possible that the persons who think they are human, and I think this is me thinking about how the test is administered, it gives this idea that if a person doesn't have empathy, certain human beings are like that. And science has shown us that psychologists have spoken about, there are persons who in society don't necessarily empathize. So you can give them a situation and they might even answer in that particular way, but it doesn't mean that they are necessarily not human or they don't feel. It's just that their level of tolerance or the level of understanding of a person's pain is, and personal tragedies are, different. Having gone through certain things, I am, more equipped, I think, to speak on certain things, right? But some persons who have not gone through a similar situation might not be as equipped, and so they might come off as less empathetic. And vice versa, persons who are on the actual planet at the time would have been treating animals severely, and that's shown because the use of having all those different type of animals, the ones that are artificial, it shows that they're in high demand, and only like exotic collectors would have those. So just thinking about it in that vein, it seems like what happens now with most things. If you have a lion in the wild, and a person takes the cub, and that lion goes extinct, but the cub has been raised up in their domestic situation, they have transformed that animal from being, or contributed to that animal becoming less natural and more, not necessarily artificial, but more or less domesticated, and they're no longer a wild animal. In this episode, we looked at the film Blade Runner, and we looked at why it is that it is such a great film. We looked at the trials of the replicants, and we kind of empathize with them. Even though they're not empathetic or they're written that way, we can empathize with them. We looked at how it is that we, as humans, we still don't have all the answers to the questions. What makes us human? We just know we are. And I think, for the most part, that is enough. We also looked at the influences of film, where it has been referenced in different films and TV shows. And I also talked about some of the theories that I have about the film, and looking at its mythology and where it could go if there was to be additional movies. And of course, yes, there are movies. There is a movie. There is movie in production, and all of this and all of that. But if we were to have another one that is true to the original, I think it could have some of those elements. If you like listening to this podcast, continue to subscribe and follow, and listen for future deep dives into TV shows and movies in this science fiction genre. I know it's a whole lot. There's so much. There are episodes in production, in pre-production, that we're going to touch some really crazy stuff. So continue to subscribe. Thank you for reaching this far on the podcast. I really, really am thankful. I hope that you guys can continue to just support, be in the comments, giving me feedback, letting me know, what you like, what you didn't like, and if you have your own theories, please feel free to share, and we can look at them.
See you next time.